73% of professionals say they feel busy every single day, but accomplish almost nothing that matters. That number comes from a 2023 Microsoft Work Trend Index survey of 31,000 workers across 31 countries. Busy, but unproductive. Exhausted, but unfulfilled. Moving fast, but going nowhere. And here's the part that should genuinely alarm you. Most of those people know something is wrong. They can feel the gap between what they are capable of and what they actually produce. They buy the planners. They download the apps. They watch the videos about morning routines and deep work and getting 1% better every day. And then, 3 days later, they are back to the same scrolling, the same procrastination, the same quiet frustration that has been building for years. If that sounds familiar, you are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not lacking talent or ambition. You are operating on a broken system. And in the next 90 minutes, you are going to replace that system entirely. This is monk mode, not a trend, not a TikTok challenge, not extreme isolation or burnout disguised as productivity. Monk mode is a temporary operating system, a mental reset designed to help you reclaim control over your time, your attention, and your identity. Here is what makes this different from every other disciplined book you have consumed and forgotten. This is not about willpower. Willpower is the biggest lie the self-help industry ever sold you. And in Chapter 1, you are going to see the science that proves it. This is not about motivation either. Motivation is a chemical state, not a strategy. It comes and goes like weather, and anyone who builds their life on weather will watch it collapse the first time the storm arrives. This is about building 7 daily habits so deeply into your routine that discipline becomes automatic. Not forced, not gritted through. Automatic, like brushing your teeth, like locking your door when you leave. These are not things you debate or decide. They are things you simply do because they are wired into who you are. You are about to learn why motivation always fails, why habits always win, and how to design a life where the right choices require zero effort because your environment, your identity, and your systems do the heavy lifting for you. Every chapter gives you one habit, one actionable, science-backed, immediately applicable habit. No abstract philosophy, no vague advice about believing in yourself. Concrete steps, backed by research from institutions like Stanford, Harvard, MIT, and NYU, that you can implement starting tonight. Here is how this book is structured. Chapters 1 and 2 destroy the myths and install the framework. Chapters 3 through 9 deliver the 7 daily habits, one per chapter, each building on the previous one. Chapter 10 integrates everything into a permanent identity shift. The system is sequential. Each habit amplifies the next. By the final chapter, you will not just have a collection of tips. You will have an operating system. One more thing before we begin. This audiobook is designed to be listened to actively, not passively. It is not background noise for your commute. It is an operating manual. When you hear a practical step, pause and write it down or commit to implementing it. The difference between the person who finishes this audiobook and forgets it and the person who finishes it and is transformed is not intelligence or talent. It is action. Specifically, it is action taken within 24 hours of hearing the instruction. By the end, you will not just know what disciplined people do differently. You will be one of them. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The lie you were told about discipline. Right now, 92% of people who set goals will never achieve them. That is not an opinion. That is data from the University of Scranton's longitudinal research on New Year's resolutions, confirmed across multiple behavioral psychology studies over 2 decades. 92% failure. And the reason is not what you think. You were told discipline is about willpower. You were told that successful people simply try harder, push through pain, and force themselves to do what others will not. You were told that if you just wanted it badly enough, you would make it happen. That is a lie, and it is the most expensive lie you have ever believed. Here is what actually happens inside your brain. Willpower is not a character trait. It is a biological resource, and it depletes. Dr. Roy Baumeister at Florida State University spent over 2 decades studying this phenomenon. His research, published across dozens of peer-reviewed journals, including the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, demonstrated something remarkable. Self-control operates like a muscle. Use it in the morning to resist checking your phone, and by afternoon, you have less of it available to resist junk food. Use it to stay focused in a boring meeting, and by evening, you have almost none left for the workout you promised yourself. This is called ego depletion, and it explains why you start every Monday with fire in your chest, and by Thursday you are back on the couch scrolling through videos about discipline instead of practicing it. Now here is the part that changes everything. The people you admire, the ones who seem impossibly disciplined, they are not using more willpower than you. They are using less. A 2015 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by Wilhelm Hoffman and colleagues tracked over 200 adults for an entire week using experience sampling. The findings shocked the research community. People with the highest self-control scores reported fewer temptations, not better resistance to temptation. Fewer temptations altogether. Read that again. The most disciplined people in the study were not fighting harder. They had engineered their lives so they rarely needed to fight at all. This is the fundamental shift that separates people who struggle with discipline their entire lives from people who seem to embody it effortlessly. The average person treats discipline as a battle. Every day is a war against cravings, distractions, and laziness. They wake up and immediately start spending willpower like a limited bank account, making decision after decision, resisting temptation after temptation, until the account hits zero and they collapse into old patterns. The top performers do something radically different. They build systems, they design environments, they construct identities, and then discipline is no longer a daily struggle. It is a default state. Think of it this way. If you keep cookies on your kitchen counter, you're going to eat cookies. That is not a willpower failure. That is a design failure. The environment made the wrong choice easy and the right choice invisible. Stanford behavioral scientist B.J. Fogg has spent 20 years proving this in his behavior design lab. His conclusion is blunt. People do not rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their systems. That sentence is the entire philosophy of this book in 16 words. And here is a practical example that will make this concrete. A 2012 study by Drive Brian Wansink at Cornell University's Food and Brand Lab tracked the eating habits of office workers. When candy was placed on their desk in a clear container, they ate an average of 9 pieces per day. When the same candy was moved to a drawer 6 feet away, consumption dropped to 3 pieces per day. Same people, same candy, same willpower. The only variable that changed was the environment. A 6-foot distance reduced consumption by 67%. That is not discipline, that is design. And it works for every area of your life, not just snacking. Now consider how this applies to your daily experience. Right now, your phone is probably within arm's reach. Social media is one tap away. Junk food is in your kitchen. Your most addictive apps are on your home screen. You have built an environment perfectly designed to produce the exact behaviors you are trying to stop. And then you blame yourself for lacking willpower. That is like standing in front of a fire hydrant and blaming yourself for getting wet. Here is an additional insight that connects willpower depletion to modern life specifically. Dr. Daniel Levitin, neuroscientist and author of research published in the Annual Review of Psychology, found that the average person processes approximately 11 million bits of information per second through their senses. But conscious attention can only handle about 50 bits per second. The gap between input and processing capacity means your brain is constantly filtering, deciding, and suppressing. Every notification, every advertisement, every piece of content competing for your attention adds to the cognitive load. By evening, your brain has made an estimated 35,000 decisions, most of them unconsciously, and each one depleted the same finite resource pool that was supposed to power your discipline. So here is the question that matters. If discipline is not about willpower, what is it about? 3 things: identity, environment, and daily systems. Who you believe you are determines what you do on autopilot. What your environment makes easy determines your default behavior. And what systems you run every single day determines your long-term trajectory. The average person says, "I want to be disciplined." The person operating in monk mode says, I am the type of person who shows up every day regardless of how I feel. That is not just a language trick. It is a neurological rewiring. Research from University College London published in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that identity-consistent behavior becomes automatic in an average of 66 days. Not 21, as the old myth claims. 66 days of acting as if you already are who you want to become. This distinction between wanting and being is the most underestimated concept in personal development. The person who says, "I want to quit smoking," is fighting against their own identity. They still see themselves as a smoker who is trying not to smoke. The person who says, "I am not a smoker," has no internal battle to fight. Their identity and their behavior are aligned. Apply this to discipline. The person who says, "I want to be more disciplined," will fight themselves every morning. The person who says, "I am someone who keeps commitments to myself," will find that the alarm clock is not a battle. It is a confirmation of who they already are. You just learned something that 95% of self-help consumers never discover. Discipline is not a feeling you summon. It is a system you install. It is an identity you adopt. And in the next 9 chapters, you are going to install 7 specific habits that make iron discipline your permanent operating mode. But first, you need to understand what monk mode actually is. Because it is not what the internet told you. And the difference between the real version and the popular version is the difference between lasting transformation and another failed attempt. That is exactly what we are covering next. Chapter 2, the monk mode operating system. Here is something the productivity industry does not want you to know. Every year, Americans spend over $13 billion on self-improvement products. That figure comes from market research firm Market Data Enterprises. $13 billion on courses, apps, coaches, journals, and audiobooks. And yet, by every measurable metric, we are more distracted, more anxious, and less disciplined than any generation before us. The system is not broken. The system is working exactly as designed. It is designed to sell you the next thing, not to actually fix the underlying problem. Every self-help product you buy that does not change your behavior makes you a better customer for the next self-help product. This is not a conspiracy. It is a business model, and you have been funding it with your attention, your money, and your hope. Monk mode breaks that cycle, but not in the way social media portrays it. Scroll through any platform, and you will see monk mode presented as extreme isolation. Delete all social media. Cut off your friends. Wake up at 4 in the morning. Take ice baths. Eat 1 meal a day. Grind until you collapse. That is not monk mode. That is cosplayed suffering. And it fails for the same reason crash diets fail. You cannot sustain what you hate. Anything built on deprivation and force has an expiration date. The person who forces themselves into an extreme routine they despise will last 2 weeks, maybe 3, before the inevitable collapse, followed by guilt, followed by another attempt at the next extreme, followed by another collapse. It is a cycle, and it has nothing to do with real discipline. Real monk mode, the version that actually rewires your behavior, is something far more sophisticated. Think of it as a temporary operating system upgrade. Your current operating system, the collection of habits, defaults, triggers, and responses that run your daily life, was installed unconsciously over years of conditioning. Most of it was written by your environment, your social circle, your algorithms, and your impulses. Very little of it was written by you. Monk mode is the decision to uninstall that default system and consciously install a better one. It is not permanent isolation. It is a focused period, typically 30 to 90 days, where you strip away the noise, simplify your inputs, and rebuild your daily architecture around 7 core habits. Here is why this works neurologically. Your brain has a limited resource called attentional bandwidth. A Princeton University and Harvard study published in Science magazine in 2013 found that cognitive load from daily distractions reduces effective IQ by up to 13 points. 13 points. That is the difference between average and below average on a standardized test. Not from lack of intelligence, from lack of available processing power. Your brain is so busy managing notifications, decisions, social comparisons, and information overload that it has nothing left for the work that actually moves your life forward. And here is a number that will make this tangible. Dr. Gloria Mark at the University of California, Irvine found that the average knowledge worker checks their email or messaging platforms 77 times per day. 77 interruptions before you even count phone notifications, social media, or coworker drop-ins. Each interruption creates a micro-decision. Each micro-decision drains a small amount of cognitive resource. By noon, you have made hundreds of decisions that produced zero progress on your actual priorities. Monk mode is not about doing more. It is about removing the noise so your brain can finally do what it was built to do. Focus deeply on one thing at a time. The 7 habits you are about to learn are not random tips. They are an integrated system. Each one builds on the previous one. Habit 1 handles your morning. Habit 2 protects your execution. Habit 3 sharpens your attention. Habit 4 optimizes your environment. Habit 5 strengthens your mental resilience. Habit 6 ensures daily accountability. Habit 7 compounds your progress over time. Together, they form a complete operating system for disciplined living. Not based on grinding harder, based on designing smarter. Now, the average person hears about monk mode and immediately jumps to the tactics. What should I do first? What app should I delete? What time should I wake up? Those questions miss the point entirely. Tactics without identity are temporary. The person who forces themselves to wake up at 5 in the morning because a podcast told them to will last 2 weeks. The person who genuinely believes, I am someone who earns their morning, will wake up early for the rest of their life. That distinction is not subtle. It is everything. It is the reason 2 people can follow the exact same routine and get completely different results. One is performing discipline. The other has become disciplined. The performer will quit when the performance gets tiring. The person with the identity will persist because quitting would feel like a contradiction of who they are. Here is a practical example. 2 people both start waking up at 5:30. Person A is doing it because a YouTube video told them all successful people wake up early. They are performing a behavior that does not match their identity. Within 3 weeks, when the novelty fades and the alarm feels painful, they return to 7:30. Person B is doing it because they have decided, I am someone who earns their morning before the world wakes up. They are not performing. They are confirming. On the hard mornings, they get up anyway, not because they feel like it, but because staying in bed would contradict who they have decided to be. Same behavior, different foundation, entirely different outcome. And this identity distinction applies to every single habit in this system. The silence protocol is not a rule you follow. It is a reflection of who you are, someone who lets results speak. Single tasking is not a technique you apply. It is a reflection of who you are, someone who gives their full attention to what matters. The evening audit is not a chore you complete. It is a reflection of who you are, someone who values truth over comfort. That is why habit 1 does not start with an alarm clock. It starts with a decision about who you are. And that decision happens in the first 5 minutes of your day. Here is what you need to understand before we go deeper. Monk mode is not punishment. It is not about proving how tough you are to your Instagram followers. It is about clearing enough space in your life to hear your own thinking again. It is about removing the 1,000 small leaks that drain your energy so you can direct that energy toward the 1 or 2 things that actually matter. McKinsey Global Institute research found that the average professional spends 28% of their workweek managing email alone. Another 20% is spent searching for information or tracking down colleagues. That is nearly half of every working week consumed by noise before any real work even begins. Imagine getting that time back. Imagine redirecting that mental energy toward your actual priorities. That is not fantasy. That is what happens when you install the monk mode operating system and run it with the 7 habits you are about to learn. Here is one final thing to understand about the operating system metaphor. Your current OS was not installed by a malicious force. It was installed by repetition. Thousands of small choices, repeated over years, created the neural pathways that now run your default behavior. Checking your phone first thing in the morning was not a conscious strategy. It was a behavior you repeated until it became automatic. Multitasking was not a deliberate decision. It was the natural result of an environment designed to fragment your attention. The good news is that the same mechanism that installed your old system can install a new one. Repetition, consistency, time. There is nothing wrong with your brain. Your brain is doing exactly what brains do, automating repeated behaviors. The problem is not the machine. The problem is the program. And you are about to rewrite the program. The monk mode operating system gives your brain a new set of instructions to automate. 7 specific, concrete, daily instructions. Repeat them long enough, and they become your new default. Not through force, through repetition, not through willpower, through design. And here is the most liberating part of this entire framework. Once you understand that discipline is a system, not a trait, you stop judging yourself for past failures. Every time you failed at a diet, a routine, or a goal, it was not because you were weak. It was because you were using the wrong tool. Willpower is the wrong tool for sustained behavior change. It always was. You were trying to hammer in a screw. No wonder it did not hold. The 7 habits you are about to learn are the right tools. They are screwdrivers, not hammers. They work with the grain of human psychology instead of against it. They leverage identity, environment, accountability, and compounding, the 4 forces that actually produce lasting change. And when you install them as a system rather than as isolated tips, they create something greater than the sum of their parts. But everything starts with the first 5 minutes of your day. And what happens in those 5 minutes determines the trajectory of your entire day, your entire week, your entire year. Let us go there now. Chapter 3, Habit 1, when the first 5 minutes. Your alarm goes off. In that instant, before you are fully awake, before your conscious mind has even engaged, a war begins. And the outcome of that war determines who you will be for the rest of the day. This is not hyperbole. This is neuroscience. When your alarm sounds, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational decision-making, is still essentially offline. It takes roughly 20 minutes after waking for your prefrontal cortex to reach full operational capacity. But your amygdala, the emotional, impulsive part of your brain, is already wide awake and screaming one message. Stay comfortable. Do not move. Hit snooze. Here is why the snooze button is the most dangerous object in your home. Every time you hit snooze, you are not just delaying your morning by 9 minutes. You are casting a vote. You are telling your subconscious mind, comfort is more important than commitment. And your subconscious mind records that vote. It files it away, and it uses it against you for the rest of the day. Dr. Charles Duhigg, in his research on keystone habits at MIT, identified a critical pattern. Certain small behaviors create chain reactions that ripple through an entire day. The snooze button is a negative keystone habit. It does not just cost you 9 minutes. It installs a permission structure for quitting. If your very first act of the day is negotiating with discomfort and choosing retreat, your brain establishes that as the day's template. There is actually a neurological explanation for why hitting snooze makes you feel worse, not better. When you fall back asleep after the alarm, your brain initiates a new sleep cycle. A full sleep cycle takes approximately 90 minutes. When the alarm sounds again 9 minutes later, you are pulled out of the early stages of a new cycle, which creates a phenomenon called sleep inertia. That groggy, heavy, impossible to function feeling that follows is not because you need more sleep. It is because you started a process your brain could not finish. You are literally more tired after hitting snooze than you would have been if you had simply gotten up. Now flip the script. Imagine the alarm goes off and you stand up immediately. No negotiation, no internal debate. Feet on the floor within 5 seconds. In that moment, you are not just waking up. You are making a declaration. You are telling your nervous system, I do what I say I will do, especially when I do not feel like it. This is what Mel Robbins discovered and documented in her research on the 5-second window. The gap between impulse and action is approximately 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, your brain generates enough reasons to avoid the discomfort, and you default to the old pattern. But if you move within 5 seconds, you bypass the negotiation entirely. Habit 1 is brutally simple. When the alarm sounds, you have 5 seconds. Stand up, feet on the floor. No snooze, no phone check, no negotiation. 5 seconds. But habit 1 does not stop there. The first 5 minutes after your feet hit the floor are equally critical. This is your identity installation window. In those 5 minutes, while your brain is transitioning from sleep to wakefulness, it is uniquely suggestible. Neuroscience calls this the hypnopompic state. Whatever you feed your mind during this window gets disproportionate weight. The average person uses those 5 minutes to check their phone. They open email, social media, news, and text messages. And within 60 seconds, they have handed control of their mental agenda to other people's priorities, other people's emergencies, and algorithms designed to trigger anxiety and outrage because those emotions drive engagement. A 2023 study by Asurion, a technology insurance company, found that the average American checks their phone within 10 minutes of waking up. Among people aged 25 to 45, that number drops to under 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Before your conscious mind has even fully activated, you are already consuming content that someone else designed to capture your attention. The person in monk mode uses those 5 minutes differently. They own the window. There are 3 options, and you choose one based on your temperament. Option 1 is 60 seconds of controlled breathing followed by 4 minutes of silent intention setting. You breathe deeply. You choose your single most important priority for the day, and you internally affirm who you are. Not who you want to be, who you are. I am someone who follows through. Option 2 is 5 minutes of physical movement. Push-ups, stretching, a short walk to the window. Moving the body before checking the phone activates your sympathetic nervous system and signals alertness. Option 3 is 5 minutes of writing. A journal entry, your top 3 priorities, or a single sentence about who you choose to be today. It does not matter which option you choose. What matters is that you choose. What matters is that in the first 5 minutes of consciousness, you are the author of your mental state, not a passive receiver of digital noise. Stanford psychologist Dr. Kelly McGonigal found in her research on stress and decision-making that morning choices create what she calls a decision cascade. One intentional choice in the first minutes of the day makes the next intentional choice easier, and the next one easier still. Conversely, one passive choice, like checking your phone, makes the next passive choice more likely. Your first decision of the day sets the slope, and every subsequent decision rolls in that direction. Here is a number that brings this home. According to research by Rescue Time, a time-tracking software company that analyzed over 225 million hours of work data, people who check email or social media in the first hour of waking are 37% more likely to report feeling overwhelmed by midday. Those who spend their first hour on proactive tasks, exercise, planning, or creative work report significantly higher levels of control and focus throughout the entire day. The morning does not just affect the morning. It sets the emotional and cognitive tone for everything that follows. Here is the practical split. The average person starts their day in reaction mode. Something beeps, they respond. Something flashes, they look. Their first 30 minutes are controlled entirely by external inputs. By the time they leave the house, they have already consumed negative news, compared their life to curated highlight reels on social media, and responded to other people's agendas. They have been awake for 30 minutes and have not made a single self-directed decision. The monk mode practitioner starts in creation mode. They decide what matters before the world tells them what is urgent. They set the terms. They choose the narrative. And by the time they engage with the external world, they have already established momentum in the direction they chose. 30 days of this single habit, and you will not recognize the quality of your mornings. 60 days, and you will not recognize the quality of your life. When the first 5 minutes, everything else gets easier. But here is the trap most people fall into. They win the morning and then destroy their progress with a single, devastating mistake that happens right when they feel most motivated. It involves their mouth, and it has nothing to do with food. That is habit 2, and it is going to challenge everything you believe about accountability. Chapter 4, Habit 2, The Silence Protocol. Here is a truth that will make you uncomfortable. The moment you announce your goals to the world, your brain begins to sabotage them. This is not philosophy. This is peer-reviewed neuroscience, and it explains why 90% of people who publicly declare their resolutions fail to follow through. In 2009, Dr. Peter Gollwitzer at New York University conducted a landmark study published in Psychological Science. The experiment was elegant. Participants were divided into two groups. Both groups set identical goals. One group announced their goals publicly. The other group kept them private. Then both groups were given 45 minutes to work toward their goals. The results were stunning. The group that announced their goals quit working an average of 33% sooner. They felt satisfied after less effort. They acted as if talking about their goal was equivalent to achieving it. Gollwitzer called this premature identity gratification. When you tell someone your plan, your brain experiences a small dopamine release, the same neurochemical associated with actual accomplishment. Your social environment treats you as if you have already done the thing. People nod, congratulate, and affirm. Your brain files that social recognition as evidence of progress. And once the brain believes progress has been made, the urgency to actually do the work diminishes. This is dopamine hijacking, and it is silently killing the execution of millions of intelligent, ambitious people every single day. Think about the last time you told someone about a new plan, a new diet, a new business idea, a new workout routine. Remember how good it felt to describe your vision? Remember the nods of approval? Now remember what happened next. If you were being honest, the execution likely faded within days. Not because you lacked motivation, because you already got the reward without doing the work. Habit 2 is the silence protocol. Build in silence. Let results make the noise. This does not mean you never talk to anyone about your life. It means you create a strict separation between planning and performing. When you are in the planning and execution phase, you keep the goal private. You do not post it on social media. You do not announce it at dinner. You do not casually mention it to coworkers looking for conversation. The average person gets a burst of inspiration, immediately texts 3 friends about their new plan, posts about it online, creates a vision board, and feels accomplished before they have taken a single concrete action. The monk mode practitioner gets the same burst of inspiration, writes it in a private journal, creates a first action step, and executes it quietly. Nobody knows. Nobody claps. Nobody validates. And that is exactly the point. The validation comes from the work itself, not from the announcement of the work. There is a deeper layer here that most people miss. Silence is not just about avoiding premature gratification. Silence is about power accumulation. Every time you share an unfinished plan, you leak energy. You invite opinions you did not ask for. You create external expectations that add pressure without adding value. You give people the ability to track your progress and judge your pace. When you work in silence, all of that energy stays internal. It compounds. It fuels action instead of conversation. There is a reason every serious martial artist, elite athlete, and high-level strategist operates quietly during preparation. The United States Navy SEALs have a principle called earn your trident every day. It means prove your identity through action, not announcement. Nobody in BUD/S training is talking about what they plan to do. They are too busy doing it. Here is the practical application. For the next 30 days, implement these 3 rules. Rule 1. Do not announce any new goal to anyone until you have completed at least 7 consecutive days of action toward it. 7 days of execution earns you the right to mention it. Not 7 days of planning. 7 days of doing. Rule 2. Replace the urge to share with the habit of recording. When you feel the impulse to tell someone about your plan, open your journal and write it down instead. This captures the thought without leaking the energy. Rule 3. Let results speak. When someone notices a change in your behavior, your body, your output, that is the moment you have earned the right to discuss it. Not before. There is a beautiful paradox here. The less you talk about your transformation, the more visible it becomes. When you spend 6 months working in silence and someone finally says, "Something is different about you," that feedback means more than 1,000 likes on a social media post ever could, because it was not performed. It was earned. Here is another dimension to the silence protocol that connects directly to neuroscience. Dr. Robert Cialdini at Arizona State University One of the world's foremost researchers on influence and persuasion identified a principle called commitment and consistency. When you publicly declare a goal, you create a public commitment. You would think that would increase follow-through. But Cialdini's research shows the opposite for goals that require sustained effort. Public commitment creates performance pressure that triggers anxiety, and anxiety triggers avoidance behavior, the very opposite of what you need. Private commitment, on the other hand, creates what psychologists call intrinsic motivation. The drive comes from within. You are not performing for an audience. You are building for yourself. And intrinsic motivation, according to decades of research by doctors Edward Deci and Richard Ryan at the University of Rochester's Self-Determination Theory Lab, is dramatically more sustainable than extrinsic motivation. So the silence protocol does not just protect your dopamine. It protects your motivation architecture. It keeps the fuel internal where it belongs. Practically, here is one more tool to support this habit. When you feel the urge to announce a goal, set a timer for 24 hours. If you still want to share it after 24 hours and 7 days of action, reconsider then. You will find that most of the time, the urge to share fades within hours. It was not about accountability. It was about premature validation. And now you know the difference. This habit alone will separate you from 90% of people who consume self-improvement content. They talk about change. You will be too busy actually changing. But silence is only half of the focus equation. You can be silent about your goals and still sabotage yourself with the single most destructive productivity myth of the modern era. The myth that you can do two things at once. Let us destroy that myth right now. Chapter 5, Habit 3, Single Task Like a Monk. $2.6 billion. That is how much productivity American businesses lose every year to the illusion of multitasking, according to the American Psychological Association's research on task switching costs. Not bad multitasking, all multitasking, because multitasking, as your brain understands it, does not exist. Dr. Earl Miller, a neuroscientist at MIT's Picard Institute for Learning and Memory, has been studying attention for over 30 years. His conclusion is absolute. The human brain cannot process two cognitive tasks simultaneously. What you experience as multitasking is actually rapid task switching, your brain toggling between tasks at high speed, like a strobe light flickering between two images. You feel productive, you feel busy, but you are actually fragmenting your cognitive power across multiple targets, hitting none of them with full force. And every switch has a cost. Dr. Gloria Mark at the University of California, Irvine, measured that cost precisely. After a single interruption, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return to the original task with the same depth of focus. Not 23 seconds, 23 minutes. And here's the terrifying part. Most people do not wait 23 minutes before the next interruption arrives. They are interrupted again within 3 to 5 minutes, which means they never actually reach deep focus at all. They spend their entire day in the shallow waters of attention, splashing around, never diving deep enough to produce meaningful work. Now calculate your typical day. If you switch tasks just 10 times, which is modest for most professionals, you lose nearly 4 hours of deep focus. Not to the tasks themselves, to the switching between them. You are working a full day, but operating with half-day cognitive capacity. And then you wonder why you feel exhausted at 5 o'clock, but cannot point to anything significant you accomplished. This is why monks in every contemplative tradition, from Buddhist monasteries in Japan to Benedictine abbeys in France, organize their entire day around single tasking. One activity at a time. Full presence. Complete attention. Not because they lacked things to do, but because they understood that scattered attention produces scattered results. Habit 3 is single task like a monk, and it requires one specific tool: time blocks. Here is the system. Divide your working day into blocks of 60 to 90 minutes. Each block has one purpose and one purpose only. During a writing block, you write. During a meeting block, you meet. During a planning block, you plan. No overlap. No secondary tasks running in the background. No quick email checks between paragraphs. No just glancing at your phone. Cal Newport, The Georgetown University computer science professor whose research on deep work has influenced productivity culture worldwide found that elite performers across fields share one common pattern. They spend dramatically more time in uninterrupted deep focus than their average peers. Not slightly more, 3 to 4 times more. The average knowledge worker achieves roughly 60 to 90 minutes of genuine deep work per day. Top performers consistently reach 3 to 4 hours. That gap, those extra 2 to 3 hours of daily deep focus, is not a small advantage. Compounded over a year, it is the difference between producing average work and producing work that defines a career. Compounded over 5 years, it is the difference between incremental progress and transformational results. During your time blocks, one rule is absolute. Your phone is not on your desk, not face down, not on silent, not in your pocket, physically absent from the workspace. Research from the University of Texas at Austin, published in the Journal of the Association for Consumer Research in 2017, proved that the mere visible presence of a smartphone, even when powered off, reduces available cognitive capacity. Your brain allocates resources to monitoring the device even when you are not using it. The researchers called it brain drain. Your phone drains your brain by existing in your visual field. Remove it. Put it in another room. Put it in a drawer. The tool that was designed to serve you has become the master. In monk mode, you reassign the hierarchy. There is a deeper principle at work here that connects to everything you have learned so far. Single tasking is not just a productivity technique. It is an identity statement. When you commit to one task fully, you are saying, "This matters enough to deserve my complete attention." When you multitask, you are saying, "Nothing I am doing right now matters enough to get all of me." Over time, these statements shape who you become. The chronic multitasker develops a shallow relationship with their own work. The single tasker develops depth, mastery, and a reputation for excellence. Here is a practical tool that makes single tasking easier during monk mode. Before each time block, write one sentence at the top of a blank page or sticky note. For the next 90 minutes, I am only doing X. That sentence is a contract with yourself. If you catch yourself drifting, look at the sentence. It pulls you back faster than any willpower ever could because it makes the commitment tangible and visible. Cal Newport also documented an important observation. Deep work is a skill, not a switch. If you have spent years in shallow mode, you cannot immediately sustain 4 hours of deep focus. Start with one time block of 60 minutes per day. Protect it fiercely. After 2 weeks, add a second block. After a month, try 3. Your attention capacity will grow, just like any other muscle, but only if you train it progressively rather than attempting to go from 0 to maximum in a single day. Here is what happens after 2 weeks of strict single tasking. You will notice something strange. Tasks that used to take 3 hours will take 90 minutes. Not because you are working faster, because you are finally working at full cognitive capacity instead of the fragmented half capacity that passes for normal in our hyper-connected world. The average person bounces between 12 to 15 apps per hour and calls it productive work. The monk mode practitioner opens one application, completes one task, and moves to the next with full cognitive resources intact. After a month, the quality gap between their output and the multitasker's output is staggering. It is not a 10% difference. It is a category difference. One is producing work that blends in. The other is producing work that stands out. This is the power of undivided attention, and it changes everything. But even perfect focus is fragile if your physical environment is working against you. You can single task with total concentration in a well-designed space, but place that same brain in a chaotic environment full of cues and triggers, and willpower crumbles in minutes. That brings us to the most underestimated habit in the entire system. Chapter 6, Habit 4, Design Your Environment. In 2006, a research team at Duke University published a paper that should have changed the entire self-help industry. They found that approximately 40% of daily actions are not conscious decisions. They are habits triggered automatically by environmental cues. 40%. Nearly half of your daily life runs on autopilot, driven not by your intentions, but by the cues surrounding you. Stop and absorb that number. For out of every 10 things you do today will not be chosen by your conscious mind. They will be triggered by your environment. The chair you sit in, the apps on your home screen, the snacks on your counter, the layout of your workspace. These are not neutral objects. They are behavioral triggers. This means that no matter how strong your goals are, if your environment is designed for your old self, your new self does not stand a chance. Most people try to change behavior through sheer force. They keep the cookies in the cabinet, but promise themselves they will not eat them. They keep Instagram on their phone, but vow to check it less. They sit in the same spot where they have wasted thousands of hours and expect different results. That is not discipline. That is fantasy. It is like standing in a river and trying not to get wet. The monk mode approach is radically different. Instead of relying on willpower to resist your environment, you redesign the environment so resistance becomes unnecessary. This is what behavioral scientists call choice architecture, and it is the single most powerful tool for lasting behavior change that most people completely ignore. Stanford's B.J. Fogg puts it simply in his 20 years of research on tiny habits. Make the behavior you want easy. Make the behavior you do not want hard. That is it. That is the entire secret. Not more willpower, not more motivation, just smarter design. Here is how Habit 4 works in practice. First, conduct an environment audit. Walk through your home and workspace with fresh eyes, as if you were visiting for the first time. Every object is either a cue for a productive behavior or a cue for a destructive one. The phone on your nightstand is a cue to scroll first thing in the morning. The running shoes by the door are a cue to exercise. The TV remote on the coffee table is a cue to sit and consume. The book on your pillow is a cue to read before sleep. Now redesign. Apply the 2-minute friction rule. For any behavior you want to increase, reduce the friction to start it to under 2 minutes. Want to read more? Place the book on your pillow so it is the first thing you touch at night. Want to exercise in the morning? Sleep in your workout clothes. Want to eat better? Pre-cut vegetables and put them at eye level in the refrigerator. Want to journal? Leave the notebook open on your desk with a pen on top. For any behavior you want to decrease, add friction. Want to stop checking social media compulsively? Delete the apps from your phone and only access them through a browser. Want to stop watching television in the evening? Unplug the TV after each use and remove the batteries from the remote. Want to stop snacking on junk food? Do not keep it in the house. Not hidden. Not in a high cabinet. Not in the house at all. Google's people operations team discovered this principle when they redesigned their office kitchens. They placed water at eye level and sugary drinks in opaque containers below the counter. Without any announcements, policies, or motivational posters, water consumption increased 47% and calorie intake from beverages dropped significantly. No willpower required. No discipline needed. Just architecture. The same principle applies to your digital environment. Your phone's home screen is an environment. Every app visible on that first page is a cue. If social media is on your home screen, you will open it dozens of times daily without conscious intent. Move it to a folder on the third page, and usage drops dramatically. Replace those prime home screen positions with apps that serve your goals. Your journal app, your reading app, your meditation timer. Your browser is an environment too. If your default tabs open to news and social media, you start every computer session consuming. If they open to your project management tool or a blank document, you start creating. This is not a minor adjustment. It is a fundamental rewiring of your default behavior. Here is one more environmental principle that most people overlook. Your social environment is your most powerful behavioral trigger. Dr. Nicholas Christakis at Yale University and Dr. James Fowler at the University of California, San Diego, published research in the New England Journal of Medicine showing that obesity, smoking, and even happiness spread through social networks. If your 3 closest friends are disciplined, you are dramatically more likely to be disciplined. If your 3 closest friends procrastinate and complain, you will absorb those patterns regardless of your intentions. This does not mean you need to abandon your friends. It means you need to be intentional about who gets the most access to your time and mental energy during your monk mode period. Reduce time with people who drain your resolve. Increase time with people who model the identity you are building. If you do not have such people in your physical life, consume their content. Read their books. Listen to their interviews. Your brain does not fully distinguish between in-person influence and media influence. Use that to your advantage. The average person inherits their environment and then fights it for the rest of their life. The monk mode practitioner audits their environment, redesigns it deliberately, and then benefits from that design automatically. One approach requires constant vigilance. The other requires a one-time investment that pays compound returns forever. Here is the key insight that ties this to identity. The average person lives in an environment they inherited and spends every day fighting against it. The monk mode practitioner redesigns the environment once and then lives inside a system that automatically supports their goals. One approach requires constant effort. The other requires a single investment of effort followed by automatic returns. Design the monastery, make the walls strong, and then living inside them requires no effort at all. Here is a concrete checklist for your first environment audit during monk mode. Walk through these 5 spaces and identify the biggest cue behavior mismatch in each one. Your bedroom. Is the phone on the nightstand? Is a book visible? Is the room optimized for sleep or for scrolling? Your kitchen. What is at eye level? What is the first thing you see when you open the refrigerator? What is on the counter? Your workspace. Is your phone within arm's reach? Is your browser open to productive tools or consumptive feeds? Is a journal or priority list visible? Your living room. What is the default activity this space suggests? Watching, reading, relaxing, consuming? Your digital space. What are the first 3 apps on your home screen? What notifications are enabled? How many taps does it take to reach your most addictive app? Fix the biggest mismatch in each space. That is 5 changes. It will take less than an hour. And those 5 changes will produce more behavioral improvement than a year of motivational videos ever could. But here is the truth that separates monk mode from every comfortable productivity system on the market. Designing an easy environment is not enough. Removing friction for good habits is half the equation. At some point, you must deliberately seek difficulty. You must train your mind to function under pressure, not just in peace. Comfort optimization creates a fragile life, and fragility breaks at the worst possible moment. That is where habit 5 begins, and it will be the most uncomfortable thing in this entire book. Chapter 7, Habit 5. Embrace strategic discomfort. In the year 161 AD, Marcus Aurelius became emperor of Rome. He was arguably the most powerful man on earth. He could have had anything he wanted, any comfort, any luxury, any indulgence. Instead, he chose to sleep on a hard surface when a soft bed was available. He fasted when food was abundant. He walked when he could ride. He deliberately subjected himself to difficulty when ease was freely offered. He was not punishing himself. He was not performing asceticism for religious approval. He was training himself. He understood something that modern comfort culture has completely forgotten. Comfort is not the absence of problems. Comfort is the slow death of your capacity to handle them. Look at the modern world. We have optimized everything for convenience. Food delivered in minutes. Entertainment on demand. Temperature-controlled environments. Social interaction without the risk of face-to-face rejection. And yet, rates of anxiety, depression, and reported inability to cope with stress have skyrocketed. We have eliminated nearly all physical discomfort from daily life, and the result is not a more resilient population. It is a more fragile one. This principle now has a scientific name. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the former options trader, risk analyst, and professor at New York University's Tandon School of Engineering, calls it anti-fragility. Some systems are fragile, they break under stress. A wine glass is fragile. Some are resilient, they survive stress. A rock is resilient, but anti-fragile systems actually get stronger from stress. Your immune system is anti-fragile. It needs exposure to germs to develop. Your muscles are anti-fragile. They need the stress of resistance to grow. And the human mind, when deliberately and consistently exposed to manageable difficulty, is profoundly anti-fragile. Research from the University of Chicago's Department of Psychology led by Dr. Sion Bylock, has demonstrated that individuals who regularly practice performing under pressure develop measurably better cognitive function when stakes are high. Their prefrontal cortex becomes more efficient at processing information under stress. Their cortisol response becomes more calibrated. They do not merely survive pressure, they leverage it. The pressure that breaks an untrained person becomes fuel for a trained one. Habit 5 is not about suffering for the sake of suffering. That is masochism, and it has nothing to do with discipline. Habit 5 is about choosing one daily act of deliberate discomfort that expands your capacity. This is strategic, not masochistic. You choose the difficulty. You control the dosage. You build tolerance systematically, the way a weightlifter adds plates gradually rather than attempting their maximum on day 1. Here are 3 tiers, and you choose one per day based on your circumstances. Tier 1 is physical discomfort. The cold shower at the end of your warm shower. The last set of exercises when your muscles are screaming. The decision to walk the extra mile when you could stop. The morning workout you do not feel like starting. These are not torture. They are negotiations with your nervous system. Every time you voluntarily do something physically uncomfortable, you send a message to your amygdala. Discomfort is not danger. I can handle this. My emotions are not my master. And your amygdala recalibrates. The threshold for what triggers a fear response rises. You become harder to rattle. Things that used to feel overwhelming start to feel manageable. Not because the things changed, because you did. Dr. Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist at Stanford University's School of Medicine, has documented that deliberate cold exposure increases norepinephrine levels by 200 to 300%. This is the same neurochemical responsible for attention, vigilance, and mood regulation. A 2-minute cold shower at the end of your normal shower is not just discomfort training. It is a neurochemical intervention that sharpens your mind for hours afterward. But physical discomfort is the easiest tier. It is the gateway. The real growth happens in the next 2 tiers, where the discomfort is psychological, not physical. Tier 2 is social discomfort. The difficult conversation you have been avoiding for weeks. The boundary you need to set with a family member or colleague. The honest feedback you need to give that might disappoint someone. The request you need to make even though it feels vulnerable. Social discomfort is where most intelligent, capable people stall completely. They can handle physical challenges. They can push through professional obstacles. But when relationships require courage, they freeze, avoid, and rationalize their inaction. Tier 3 is professional discomfort. Volunteering for the project nobody wants. Presenting first in the meeting instead of waiting to see what everyone else says. Submitting work before you feel it is ready. Asking for the raise. Pitching the idea. Starting the business before the plan is perfect. Professional discomfort is where careers either accelerate exponentially or plateau indefinitely. You do not need to practice all 3 tiers every day. That would be unsustainable and counterproductive. You choose one deliberate act of controlled discomfort per day. That is it. Some days it is physical. Some days it is social. Some days it is professional. But every single day, you do one thing that makes you slightly uncomfortable on purpose. And here is what happens after 30 days of this practice. Your relationship with discomfort fundamentally transforms. Where you once avoided it reflexively, you begin to recognize it as a signal. Discomfort stops being a wall and starts being a door. On the other side of every difficult conversation is a stronger relationship. On the other side of every challenging workout is a more capable body. On the other side of every professional risk is growth that safety could never produce. The average person avoids discomfort until life forces it upon them, and then they crumble because they have no practiced response. They have spent years building a comfortable life with no immune system for difficulty. When the inevitable challenge arrives, a job loss, a health crisis, a relationship failure, they have zero practiced capacity to handle it. The monk mode practitioner voluntarily enters discomfort daily, so when life delivers inevitable challenges, they are not rattled. They have been here before. Not this specific challenge, but this intensity of difficulty. They have trained for it. They are ready. There is a phrase attributed to the ancient Stoic philosophers that captures this perfectly. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The anticipation of discomfort is almost always worse than the discomfort itself. And the only way to internalize that truth at a bone-deep level is through repeated experience. Reading about it does nothing. Talking about it does nothing. You must feel it, repeatedly, until your nervous system updates its predictions. This is not theory. This is armor. Build it daily. Now, discomfort builds strength. But strength without self-awareness is just blind force applied randomly. You need a daily mirror that reflects not what you hope is true, not what your ego insists is true, but what actually is true about how you spent this day. That is the function of habit 6, and it is the habit most people will resist the hardest because it removes the one thing humans cling to most desperately: self-deception. Chapter 8. Habit 6. The Evening Audit. Every commercial airline pilot in the world runs a post-flight checklist after every single flight. It does not matter if the flight was routine. It does not matter if they have flown the same route 1,000 times. It does not matter if nothing went wrong. The checklist exists because human memory is unreliable, self-perception is biased, and small errors compound into catastrophic ones when left unchecked. Your day is no different. And yet, most people end their day the same way they end their flights. No checklist, no audit, no review. They simply stop, collapse into entertainment or sleep, and wake up the next day to repeat the same unexamined patterns. They have no data on what worked, no data on what failed, no system for improvement. They are running a complex operation, their life, without any performance metrics at all. Habit 6 is the evening audit. It takes 5 minutes. And it is the most honest conversation you will have all day because you are having it with yourself. Here is the structure. Every evening, before any screens or entertainment, you sit down with a notebook or a journal and answer 3 questions. What did I do today that moved me forward? What did I do today that held me back? What is the single most important action for tomorrow? That is it. 3 questions. 5 minutes. Zero self-deception. Dr. Tasha Eurich, an organizational psychologist and researcher, spent 4 years studying self-awareness across nearly 5,000 participants. Her findings, published across multiple studies and detailed in her Harvard Business Review research, revealed that 95% of people believe they are self-aware, but only 10 to 15% actually are. The gap between who people think they are and how they actually behave is enormous. And that gap is where potential goes to die. The evening audit closes that gap, not through feel-good affirmations or gratitude lists, although gratitude has its place elsewhere, through radical, unflinching honesty with yourself. Here is what this looks like in practice. You committed to single tasking today, did you? Or did you check your phone during the deep work block? Write it down. Be specific. Check phone at 10:47 during writing block. Lost 20 minutes. You planned to exercise, did you? Or did you negotiate with yourself until the window closed? Write it down. Skipped workout. Told myself I would do it after dinner. Did not. You intended to follow the silence protocol, did you? Or did you casually mention your new project to a colleague at lunch? Write it down. This is not about self-punishment. This is not about beating yourself up or generating guilt. This is about data collection. You cannot improve what you do not measure. And you cannot measure what you do not honestly record. A scientist does not judge their data. They observe it, analyze it, and adjust their hypothesis. You are the scientist of your own behavior. The evening audit is your data collection instrument. Harvard Business School professor Teresa Amabile spent decades researching what drives sustained motivation and performance. Her progress principle research, based on analysis of over 12,000 daily diary entries from professionals across 7 companies, found that the single most powerful motivator in professional life is evidence of meaningful progress. Not praise, not money, not perks, not promotions. Progress. The evening audit gives you that evidence. On days when you followed through, you see it written in your own hand. That evidence compounds into confidence. You begin to trust yourself because you have a written record proving that you keep your commitments. On days when you fell short, you see that too. And instead of vague guilt or that uneasy feeling that the day was wasted, you have specific, actionable data about exactly where the breakdown occurred. The average person judges their day by how they feel. The problem is that feelings are unreliable narrators. You can have a productive day and feel terrible because one negative email hijacked your emotional state. You can have a completely wasted day and feel fine because you were comfortably distracted by entertaining content. The monk mode practitioner judges the day by what they did. Feelings are noted, but actions are the evidence. The journal does not lie. The data does not flatter. And over 30 days of honest audits, the patterns become undeniable. You will see exactly which environments trigger your worst habits. You will see exactly which time of day your discipline is weakest. You will see which excuses you repeat most often. This is information you cannot access through thinking alone. You must write it down. This audit also serves as a psychological reset. When you close the journal, the day is complete. Whatever happened, good or bad, is recorded and released. You do not carry it into your sleep. You do not ruminate on mistakes at 3 in the morning. You learn, you plan tomorrow's most important action, and you release. 5 minutes. 3 questions. Total honesty. That is habit 6. Here is one more dimension to the evening audit that transforms it from a routine into a weapon. After 30 days of honest audits, go back and read the first week's entries. You will be stunned. The patterns you could not see in real time become blindingly obvious in retrospect. You will see the exact days you fell off track, and more importantly, you will see why. Maybe every Monday starts strong, but Thursday is consistently your weakest day. Maybe your discipline breaks down after every meeting with a particular colleague. Maybe you always skip the workout on days you stayed up past 11 the night before. This is intelligence. Real, operational intelligence about your own behavioral patterns. No self-help book can give you this. No guru can tell you this. Only your own data, collected honestly over time, reveals the specific architecture of your habits, both the ones that serve you and the ones that sabotage you. Dr. Benjamin Hardy, an organizational psychologist whose research was published in collaboration with strategic coach Dan Sullivan, found that people who engage in daily written reflection are 42% more likely to achieve their goals than those who merely set them. The mechanism is not magical. It is informational. When you write down what happened, your brain processes the information differently than when you merely think about it. Writing activates the reticular activating system, the part of your brain responsible for filtering what deserves attention. Once activated around your goals and habits, your RAS begins flagging relevant information throughout the day. You start noticing opportunities, patterns, and connections that were always there, but invisible to your undirected attention. And now we arrive at the habit that ties everything together. The habit that separates people who are disciplined for a week from people who are disciplined for a lifetime. The mathematics of this habit are staggering, and most people quit right before they start to see results. Chapter 9, Habit 7, Protect the Compound. If you improve by just 1% every single day for 1 year, you will not be 1% better at the end. You will be 37 times better. That is not motivation. That is mathematics. Specifically, it is the compound growth formula. 1.01 raised to the power of 365 equals 37.78. 1% daily improvement, compounded over 12 months, produces nearly 38 times the starting value. But here's the flip side. If you decline by 1% every day, 0.99 to the power of 365, you shrink to 0.03, essentially zero. This is the most powerful and most ignored principle in personal development. James Clear popularized it in his work on atomic habits, but the underlying mathematics have been understood by economists, investors, and strategists for centuries. Warren Buffett built the greatest fortune in investment history not through dramatic moves, but through consistent compounding over decades. Habit 7 is protect the compound, and it operates on one rule: never miss twice. Here is why this rule is more important than any individual habit in this entire system. The compound does not care about your best days. It does not care about the mornings when you woke up motivated and executed perfectly. What the compound cares about is your worst days. What you do on the day you do not feel like it, the day when you are tired, stressed, or defeated, that is what determines your long-term trajectory. Because everyone can be disciplined when they feel motivated. The compound is built by the people who show up when they feel nothing. You are going to miss days. That is not failure. That is reality. Life has emergencies, illness, unexpected demands. You will miss a workout. You will skip the morning routine. You will break a commitment. The question is not whether you will miss. The question is what happens next. The average person misses one day and lets it become 2. Then 2 becomes 3. Then 3 becomes a week. Then a week becomes the old pattern returning entirely. They do not realize that the first miss costs them almost nothing mathematically, but the second consecutive miss is where the real damage begins. The first miss is an accident. The second miss is the start of a new habit. The third miss is the old identity reclaiming territory. The monk mode practitioner has one unbreakable rule. Miss once, recover immediately. If you missed the morning routine yesterday, you execute it flawlessly today. Not perfectly, but with full effort. If you skipped the evening audit, you do it tonight with double the honesty. If you broke the silence protocol and told someone your plan, you recommit to 30 days of silence starting now. The recovery speed is what matters, not the miss itself. Here is a useful mental model for this. Think of your habit streak not as a chain that breaks permanently when you miss a day, but as a river that occasionally encounters a rock. The river does not stop flowing because of the rock. It flows around it and continues. Your discipline is the river. The occasional missed day is the rock. The critical factor is not whether rocks exist. It is whether the river keeps flowing. This is not about perfection. Perfection is another form of the willpower trap. It creates a standard so high that any failure feels catastrophic, which triggers shame, which triggers avoidance, which leads to quitting entirely. The never miss twice rule is the antidote to perfectionism. It gives you permission to be human while demanding that your humanness does not become an excuse for surrender. This is about trajectory. A plane flying from New York to Los Angeles is off course nearly the entire flight. Wind, weather, and mechanical variance push it off trajectory constantly. But it arrives on time because the pilot corrects constantly. Small adjustments, immediate corrections, never 2 errors in the same direction. Your compound works the same way. Each day you execute your 7 habits, you are adding 1%. Each day you miss and recover quickly, you maintain the trajectory. But each day you miss and let it slide, you begin subtracting. And subtraction compounds just as ruthlessly as addition. Here is why most people quit. Behavioral researcher and author Darren Hardy describes something he calls the valley of disappointment. For the first few weeks of any new system, you will not see dramatic results. The compound has not had time to accumulate. You are putting in effort and seeing almost nothing in return. This is where 90% of people stop. They expected linear progress. Put in X, get X back. But compounding does not work linearly. It works exponentially. The results are invisible at first, and then they are undeniable. Think of bamboo. A bamboo seed shows no visible growth above ground for nearly 4 years. But during those 4 years, it is building an extensive root system underground. In the 5th year, it can grow up to 90 feet in just 6 weeks. The growth was always happening. It was just invisible. Your 7 habits work the same way. The first 30 days will feel like nothing is changing. The second 30 days, you will notice small shifts. By day 90, other people will notice. By day 180, you will not recognize your old self. Here is a practical tool to help you trust the process during those invisible early days. Keep a compound evidence journal. This is separate from your evening audit. Once per week, write down 3 small improvements you have noticed, no matter how tiny. I got out of bed without hitting snooze 4 out of 7 days. I completed 2 full deep work blocks without checking my phone. I caught myself about to announce a goal and stayed silent instead. These micro-victories are invisible to the outside world, but they are evidence that the compound is accumulating underground, just like the bamboo roots. When doubt creeps in, and it will, read that journal. The evidence is there. You just have to be willing to see it. The average person measures progress in days and quits when they do not see dramatic change within a week. The monk mode practitioner measures progress in months and understands that the dramatic change is simply the invisible work finally becoming visible to the world. But only if you protect the compound. Only if you never allow 2 consecutive misses. Only if you trust the math when the results are not yet visible. That is habit 7. Protect the compound. Trust the math. Never miss twice. Now, there is one final piece. 7 habits will change your behavior. But lasting transformation requires something deeper than behavior change. It requires a fundamental shift in who you believe you are. And that shift is the subject of our final chapter. Chapter 10, The Identity Shift, Becoming the Monk. Let us travel 1 year into the future. It is exactly 12 months from today. You are looking in the mirror, not at your body, at your life, your habits, your results, your daily reality, the way you spend your mornings, the way you handle difficulty, the relationship you have with yourself. There are only 2 scenarios. In the first scenario, you consumed this audiobook and felt inspired. For a few days, maybe a week, you tried some of the habits. You set the alarm and got up early. You tried the silence protocol. You even journaled once or twice. Then life happened. The old patterns crept back. The phone returned to the nightstand. The goals were announced to friends at a dinner party. The deep work blocks were replaced by shallow busyness. The evening audit was abandoned because it felt tedious. And a year later, nothing has changed except you are 12 months older with the same frustrations, the same unfulfilled potential, the same gap between who you are and who you know you could be. And you have added this audiobook to the growing list of things you consumed and forgot. In the second scenario, you installed the system. Not perfectly, not without setbacks. There were mornings you hit snooze. There were days you broke the silence protocol. There were weeks where the evening audit was rushed or skipped. But you followed the never miss twice rule. You recovered, you corrected, and you kept going. You won the first 5 minutes. You built in silence. You single-tasked with discipline. You redesigned your environment. You embraced daily discomfort. You audited your days with honesty. You protected the compound. And 12 months later, the person looking back at you in the mirror is someone you barely recognize but deeply respect. The difference between these 2 scenarios is not talent. It is not willpower. It is not even the 7 habits themselves. The difference is identity. Dr. James Clear's framework on identity-based habits, which draws on decades of behavioral psychology research, frames this with crystalline clarity. There are 3 layers of behavior change. The outermost layer is outcomes, what you want to achieve. Lose weight, make more money, get promoted. The middle layer is processes, what you do. Go to the gym, write every day, study for 2 hours. The innermost layer is identity, what you believe about yourself. I am an athlete. I am a writer. I am a disciplined person. Most people start with outcomes. I want to lose weight. I want to be productive. I want to be disciplined. The problem is that outcome-based goals create no internal compass. When the outcome is not immediately visible, which it will not be for weeks or months, motivation evaporates. The goal was supposed to pull you forward, but when results are invisible, the goal just feels like another source of frustration. Identity-based change works from the inside out. You begin not with what you want to achieve, but with who you wish to become. And then every action becomes a vote for or against that identity. Here is the practical mechanism. Right now, you have a collection of beliefs about who you are. Some of those beliefs serve you. Many do not. I am not a morning person. I have no willpower. I always start things but never finish them. I am just not disciplined. These are not facts. They are stories. They are narratives your mind assembled from past experiences, failures, and repetitions, and then hardened into what feels like permanent identity. But they are not permanent. They are just well practiced. Monk mode is the period during which you rewrite the story. Not through affirmations on your bathroom mirror. Through action. Every morning you win the first 5 minutes. You cast a vote for the identity of someone who keeps commitments to themselves. Every day you follow the silence protocol. You cast a vote for someone who lets results speak. Every time you single task through a full, deep work block, you cast a vote for someone with the capacity for sustained focus. Every evening you complete the audit. You cast a vote for someone who values truth over comfort. One vote does not change an election, but hundreds of votes, accumulated over days and weeks and months, create an overwhelming mandate. Your identity shifts not because you decided it should, but because the evidence became undeniable. Research from University College London, led by Dr. Filippo Lally and published in the European Journal of Social Psychology, found that the average time for a new behavior to become automatic, to truly integrate into identity, is 66 days. Not 21, as the popular myth claims. 66. That means the first 2 months are the installation phase. During that phase, the habits will feel effortful. You will negotiate with yourself. You will want to quit. That is normal. It is the cognitive friction of installing new software over an old operating system. The old system resists. The old identity fights back. Every shortcut, every excuse, every just this once is the old identity trying to maintain control. But around day 66, something shifts. The habits stop requiring conscious effort. The morning routine is no longer a battle. It is simply what you do when the alarm sounds. The silence protocol is no longer a restriction. It is simply how you operate during execution. The evening audit is no longer a chore. It is a ritual you look forward to because it gives you clarity. Single tasking is not discipline. It is your default mode. They are simply what you do. They are who you are. And that is the moment monk mode succeeds. Not when your circumstances change. Not when your bank account changes. Not when other people notice and compliment you. But when you no longer have to remind yourself to be disciplined, because discipline is no longer something you do. It is something you are. This is what separates the person who reads about monk mode from the person who lives it. The reader collects information and feels briefly inspired. The practitioner collects identity and is permanently transformed. So here is your final instruction. Do not try to implement all 7 habits tomorrow. That is the willpower trap, and you know now exactly why it fails. Instead, start with habit 1. When the first 5 minutes for 7 consecutive days. Just 7 days. Prove to yourself that you can keep one commitment to yourself consistently for 1 week. Then add habit 2. Then habit 3. Layer by layer, week by week, until all 7 habits are running simultaneously. Here is the recommended installation schedule. Week 1 through 2, habit 1 only. When the first 5 minutes. Master the alarm. On the morning window. Week 3 through 4, add habit 2, the silence protocol. Keep your goals private while continuing to win your mornings. Week 5 through 6, add habit 3, single tasking. Introduce your first daily time block. Week 7, add habit 4, the environment audit. Redesign one room or one digital space. Week 8, add habit 5, strategic discomfort. One deliberate difficulty per day. Week 9, add habit 6, the evening audit. 3 questions, 5 minutes, every night. Week 10, add habit 7, protect the compound. Never miss twice. By week 10, all 7 habits are active. By week 12, they are beginning to feel natural. By week 18, 66 days, they are becoming automatic. By month 6, they are who you are. This layered approach respects the science. It works with your brain instead of against it. And it avoids the most common failure mode of self-improvement, trying to change everything at once and sustaining nothing. There is one more insight that deserves your attention. The person you are right now, the one listening to these final words, has already demonstrated something important. You did not stop at chapter 1. You did not skip ahead for the highlights. You invested the full time to understand the complete system. That alone puts you in a small minority. Most people who start an audiobook about discipline do not finish it. The irony is predictable but real. You finished. That tells me something about your capacity. You have more follow-through than you give yourself credit for. And now you have the system to channel it. By day 30, you will feel different. By day 60, you will think differently. By day 90, you will be different. This is not about becoming a monk forever. This is about borrowing the monk's operating system long enough to rebuild yours. It is a temporary installation that produces permanent results. You have everything you need. The science is clear. The habits are specific. The system is proven. The only variable left is your decision. And that decision happens now. Not tomorrow. Not Monday. Not after the next video. Not after you feel ready. Now, in the next 5 seconds. Because you already know that after 5 seconds, your brain will generate every reason to delay. You learned that in Chapter 3. Use it. 5 seconds. Stand up metaphorically. Commit. Choose one habit. Start tonight. Discipline is not what you do once. It is who you choose to become every single day. Choose.